Shut up and sit down.
By all means, go for it. Have fun. Just leave me alone.
People are coming together more and more and more and more as the government has been failing us more and more.
I'm against being shitty to people.
You can't research your way into understanding somebody.
One way or another, I'd rather have the fight now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty Live. We have an awesome show for you guys tonight. I'm really excited about this one. But first, we're going to talk about some sponsors, some other stuff. First and foremost, if you're watching this episode on one of those big tech media giant bullshit companies like Facebook or YouTube, I know I still stream to both of those platforms, but go to odyssey.com/@fightforliberty and you can watch this stream as well as anything else that I've done. It's all over there. So go watch it over there. Go give them your business. They're an awesome liberty-minded organization. And I'm excited to finally be on there and streaming on there and have everything ready to go. So go leave this stream, go to Odysee, start watching it there. You might miss the next 10 seconds. It's fine. Next up on the agenda, Nugg of Knowledge. We talk about this every episode, but I cannot push these guys hard enough. They're an awesome organization founded by some really great libertarians that most of you all know and love. And so it's also a great place to get your cannabis. So get high, support the liberty movement. It's a win-win. I do it every day. You guys should too. But yeah, if you use promo code F4L, you're going to get 10% off your first purchase. You're going to help out Free Speech Media. You're going to help out Fight for Liberty. And you're going to help out Nugg of Knowledge. So it's just all around a good idea. And if you need one more selling point, 10% of every purchase that you make at Nugg of Knowledge goes to ending the war on drugs. It's either going to normal, legalize happiness. And then there's a third organization that I cannot remember right now. But they give 10% of every purchase to one of those organizations that's helping end the war on drugs. So go give them your business. They're awesome. Check them out. Last but not least, Mr. Tom Queter. He's rolling for New York State Senate. And it's a really exciting campaign. And right now, if you go to my Twitter at David Fite, you can look at the pinned post and you can see that this NFT is for sale, made by the wonderful and awesome Justin O'Donnell. So go check that out. You can buy that NFT and support the campaign. But without further ado, I've got a really awesome show for you guys tonight. The one, the only, Mr. Jeremy Kauffman is on the Fite. Hello, sir.
Hey, it's great to be here with you, David.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So I always start off with kind of an intro question of your testimony. So I'm curious, when did you self-identify first as a libertarian or liberty-minded?
Liberty-minded would have been pretty young. I mean, I started like questioning the status quo at a pretty young age, and then that like I was kind of oscillated between where that put me. But I found a number of different ideas interesting. But I definitely read like Ayn Rand when I was a teenager, and I was reading. I read like Milton Friedman when I was really young, actually, and thought that was really good. So I was definitely exposed to the ideas when I was pretty young and found them interesting from a pretty young age.
That's interesting. I feel like it's fairly rare to see someone that actually, I mean, reads those kinds of books in general, but got into the liberty side of those thick books at a young age.
Well, I was a big nerdy kid. I ended up starting a tech company, so it's like not that surprising that I was a nerdy kid, probably.
Fair.
But I read. It wasn't just like libertarian stuff though. Like I remember reading like Howard Zinn, which is pretty lefty. And I guess it's like libertarian left, you could maybe argue. But I remember reading that when it was like basically like I was on the internet, right? I was on the internet from a young age, and the internet would like tell me things. People on the internet would tell me things that my teachers weren't telling me. Like your teachers are lying to you. Like on like web forums or like various places on the internet. So I would start. People would tell me, "Hey, you should don't listen to your history teacher. Go read this book or whatever."
Yeah, that was. I'm really glad that I was homeschooled and got to avoid some of the brainwashing. But it's still the same history books, right? You know, it was like a Christian curriculum, and so it was spun a little bit differently than some like science and obviously science, because like my entire K through 12 was creationism, so that was kind of interesting, like going out into the rest of the world and just having no concept of really evolution or what it is, other than, you know, my Sunday school teachers shitting on it. But the history, it's just as bullshit. The only difference was that the curriculum was written in the South, so it took a slightly different look on the Civil War, but still, you know, we won, the US won, like it, and you know, no move bombing, no Tuskegee experiments, no Tulsa race massacre, none of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I say I've gotten like even more skeptical as I've gotten older, because I look at the way the sort of like, whatever you want to call it, like the truth making apparatus of the modern world, you know, sort of how what's regarded as true, you know, what gets repeated as true. And so now, you know, if I look at like what would be regarded as consensus today, well, what's history but like the consensus of the past, you know? So it's like, it certainly makes me wonder. Yeah, you know, I think like, to me, it's like I've reached a state of like, you know, extreme skepticism about, not that anything particular is false, right? I'm not saying like everything you've been taught in history is a lie, or I'm not making any claim like that, but just in the sense that like, well, if in your current world you've seen things be so crazy, so many things that, you know, appear false to you being readily adopted, you know, why would the past have been particularly different?
Right.
You know, I think is a question to be asking.
Yeah, the only white pill that I've had lately in that regard was I was hanging out with this girl that I was seeing at the time's family, and I was helping her little sister with her history homework, and she's in like 6th grade or 7th grade at the time, and she was learning about 9/11. At like, that was the part of her history textbook that she was at, which in and of itself was kind of a slap in the face that like she's learning what I lived through in history class. But also like what was in that textbook was different than the consensus of the time, and that like super mainstream narrative that we got fed there at the beginning, that most adults still believe because they haven't like really looked into it or care about it. Like, it was in her textbook that like Bush knew about it before it happened, that like these issues, yeah, like the whole like person interrupting him at the book reading at the library like 3 hours before the first plane hit, and like that's in like all these conspiracy theory videos, that's in her textbook. And I was like, all right, I mean, at least they're being more honest than I was expecting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know about, I don't even know about some of these, and I'm not suggesting even necessarily like, you know, just even that like conspiratorial type. I'm not reaching for like anything in particular. I just think that it's, you know, it's sort of human nature to, you know, to mislead ourselves, and the victors write history and they come up with more, you know, altruistic and positive interpretations of, you know, whatever. You know, whatever has happened. You've got me curious now. I want to see how they talk about the, you know, the Iraq War. I mean, certainly from my perspective, like one of the most the biggest wastes of lives and money and resources, and just a terrible travesty, you know, that produced basically nothing. But I can't believe the textbooks would actually teach that stuff. So like,
yeah, I don't think that it looked quite that way on the war, but I mean, I guess that's one advantage of the like quote unquote left takeover of education, is that, you know, a lot of this was started with Bush and can kind of be pinned on Bush as a right winger and as a Republican, and it kind of helps them to actually be like, yeah, Bush tricked us into this horrible war, and then Biden got us out. Yay.
Yeah, right, and he did. And I will say, like, I think Biden deserves credit for doing that. But about the only thing he deserves credit for, but he did. And as far as I can tell, I don't know. I mean, feel free to tell if I got fake news. I'm not always like keeping up, but my impression is that we did have more soldiers and troops abroad, and now we have less. And you know, that is a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, credit where credit's due. He's done like a half a good thing, and you know, same with like DeSantis. He did like half a good thing down there in Florida, and you know, kind of sort of didn't go as tyrannical as maybe he could have, and like deserves credit.
Right. Yeah.
So
people need an enemy. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna pivot, but because I've been into crypto for a while, and it's definitely gotten away from me in the last like 2 years, but I feel like I still mostly understand what's going on in that world. Blockchain as a function has eluded me and confused me since I first heard the term in like early 2018, and I still don't really understand it. So maybe for the viewers that are a little bit more like me, you explain what blockchain is before we get into like how LBRY uses it.
Sure. Crypto, assuming we mean cryptocurrency, is a technology that's powered by blockchain. When I say blockchain, I mean public blockchains. I won't get into the difference, but just like for anyone who cares. So when I talk about blockchain, I mean public blockchains. I'm not going to keep saying the word public. But basically, it's a new, like, honestly, this is going to be a boring explanation, but I think it's the most accurate one. Like, a blockchain is a new type of database. And if a database is a word that you don't like, a database is like a fancy spreadsheet. It stores information that you can look up later. And what a blockchain does that's really novel, we don't need to get into how it does this unless you want me to, but what a blockchain does that's novel is it lets you agree on what's in the database without putting one party in charge of the database, right? And so it's like Facebook uses databases to power Facebook.com. Facebook owns all of those. Facebook decides, when someone goes to look up your name, what the age is returned and all this other stuff is, right? That's all in Facebook's database. So what blockchain lets us do is it lets us have databases without having person know them. We have to give up a lot to get that. They're slower. They're more expensive to use. They have this thing called transaction fees. That's where you're paying essentially the people to do these transactions for you. So there's a lot of downsides, but what it lets us do is it's really powerful. And it lets us, the most basic application of what you can do with this is you have money, right? Or things that are money-like. You can debate what money is. So, so that's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a blockchain. It's very simple. It's very elegant. Bitcoin's beautiful. I'm not trying to by the way, to me, simple as a technical person is a compliment. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. But it's a database, and all it has account numbers, and it has how much Bitcoin is in that account number. Account number being an address, right? That's all it is. And you can issue commands to move a coin. You can say, delete this many from my balance and move them into this other one. And you can create new addresses, right? And that's basically it. That's all you can do. That's the entire system. I mean, I maybe left a couple of bits out, but that's like basically the entire system. But you can take the properties of that system. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. So if you look at something like a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, that says, well, let's use the fact that we can have a database and use it to maintain corporate transactions. Who has how much stock and actually perform spending from our corporate treasury. If you look at, what's another big application? I mean, I'll talk about ours, right? So ours is saying we can use that database to store identities and to store information that exists. So we take the LBRY blockchain. People can create channels, can create identities on there. They can publish information. There's now millions of identities on the LBRY blockchain, tens of millions of pieces of content from really big creators. A lot of them don't even know they're necessarily using a blockchain. We try to make it as easy for people to use as possible through Odysee. So my mom can use Odysee. She has no idea. She doesn't really know what blockchain is, So Odysee is Odysee.com, ODYSE.com. Hopefully people are watching this there. That's just like an easy to use website, but part of that's better policy than YouTube, more fun, etc. But part of what makes the whole thing definitely interesting is this blockchain aspect where on every other site, you just saw Getter launch, people post things, they get deleted. It's like the trusting someone else to protect your free speech or whatever. I think that's foolish when we now have tech, you can own your handle. So if I follow you, that's a direct connection, the same way that if I send you Bitcoin, right? So in other words, like no one can get in the middle of that. No one can say, you know what? David's not following Jeremy anymore because I don't like what Jeremy had to say. In fact, Jeremy's not even allowed to talk. That all that stuff is impossible with this design. And so it's definitely a pretty exciting evolution of what's came before.
I think you bring up a really important distinction there between Odysee and things like Getter and some of the other things that have come before, where it's not just that you guys are so free speech that you're gonna pinky promise you're not going to take stuff down. It's like you built a system where you can't. You functionally can't do the terrible things that YouTube does, and you built an entire system around that. And I think that speaks a lot to, like, it's not just going to end up being bullshit like Getter was.
Yeah. Which is also that I think it's the only way that can even work. I think there are sites out there right now that are centralized that have better policy than some of the big tech sites. But part of it is, I think part of the reason big tech plays the way that it does is it's a result of natural incentives. Just because you can look at how it's played out repeatedly on like everyone, right? Like their policies were all better before. Every great big tech site starts open APIs and just embed our stuff and build alternative clients and you can anything, and they're much more free. Like Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. They all went through the same, not literally the same, but approximately the same set of steps where they were much better. Even Google, right? Google was much better. Google was a much better company a decade ago than they are today. And I think that, so like, even if a company is very good today, it's like, well, we've seen repeatedly, whatever these incentives are, I don't even need to name exactly what they are, how things play out this way. Like there's clearly, like, we see this play out repeatedly. There's not a company you can point to where it's like, oh, well, they've been good for 30 years. Right. So even if some new companies, well, we've seen companies be good in the past, they get big enough, whether it's the ad money or other things, who knows, whatever those corrupting incentives or corrupting pressures are, And so in our case, everything we've done is open source. Odysee does set its own rules. So Odysee sets rules just like Twitter does, just like these other things do. But what's different about that, just like YouTube does, what's different about it is, well, one, the rules are better, but the real part is that everything is open source, everything is decentralized. So like if Odysee ever becomes a real jerk and someone wants to start odyssey2.com, there's not that same set of hurdles where you have to start over from scratch. People can take their following. You can effectively, all of your settings, all of your everything can go into alternative ones. The closest thing, I think, like, this isn't the sexiest comparison, but one of the systems that's held up the best is email. Email, it's certainly gotten less popular, but it never got corrupted. You never hear people worry about, I'm going to get kicked off my email. And so I think that's part of the reason email has held up, is because it's this open source type approach. It's more decentralized in the sense that you can be on Outlook and I can be on Proton Mail or whatever, and they can all communicate. So I think, like, that's definitely how we're trying to take content publishing. Bitcoin has these properties as well. I'm not trapped in Coinbase. I can use a service to sign up. I take my Bitcoin with me. I leave. I'm still part of the network. And so that's what we're trying to do, is turn video sharing, or even digital content sharing more generally, into systems that have these properties.
So what's the pettiest thing that you disliked about previous systems that you changed when you helped build Odysee?
This is well, so I wouldn't say that this is like petty, so maybe I would avoid the answer. But what jumped into my head is definitely, like, I don't like when I try to pay, like, for movies and stuff. Like, I have BitTorrent and I use it sometimes, but I try to, like, I feel like, people put a bunch of money into something, like, they deserve something. I don't want to, like, jump through too many hoops or whatever, but I definitely don't like how frustrating it can be, where it's like, something was on this site, but then it disappears, or like when something's available in one country, but not another, this stuff, like, really bothers me, because I feel like it denies reality of how, like, how information works. I'm very, like, reality seeking, truth seeking person, and so I will, that's like a big pet peeve for me. And that's something, like, I want to fix. Like, if you buy something on LBRY, you own it. You don't own it on, like, Amazon server, where what you actually own is a promise from Amazon. Like, you can have the file, that's yours, so so I guess this is a pet peeve in the sense that, like, most people don't care about this. Like, this is not an animating subject for most people. But for me, it definitely is. I don't like this idea of these things being ephemeral. I like the idea of the stronger sense of owning something.
Yeah, and honestly, I think maybe most of the time this isn't a very animating point, but I think that we all, or most people, saw the like holiday movies as on like Hulu and Disney Plus and Netflix and those streaming services, most of them were like available until December 28th or something like
Yeah.
that. And they said that across all of them. And I was like, and my family, we realized that we missed a movie that we were actually kind of trying to watch. And like, I don't care that it's December 5th or January 5th. I'm still going to watch a Christmas movie. And we went to go find it and it wasn't there anymore because like they canned almost all of the holiday movies and on January 1st. And so I think it's like it's in my head at least already. When you mentioned that, I was like, yeah, that's really annoying. I just had that problem like 2 nights ago.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's messed up because think about like other goods, they don't, you're not like, no pants today, you're not, the pants are only in, I don't know, it's just like this, they're playing these kinds of games where it's like, it's available, it's not available. It's like, if we had better markets in this stuff, if people actually owned the things that they bought, and could resell them, like a lot of ways, there definitely were some benefits of certainly the digital streaming, it's done so much in terms of things you can find and so on. But if you look at like, the DVD era or whatever, where it's like, well, I own this, you can't reach into, you can't decide that one of those characters was problematic and cut his scene, cut his line, and I go back to watch it and it's a different copy, all of this stuff that I find like, I'm not gonna say it's like all the way to dystopian, but it definitely like irks me like a little bit that this idea of like that they can just change these things whenever they want. And I'm not saying I like the idea of art evolving. I'm not saying hey, update your film, and I'm not even saying past things can't be problematic or whatever. But this notion that like something can just disappear because or this episode was problematic. You're no longer gonna be able to see the South Park episode that featured Muhammad or whatever it is. And it just gets memory hold. That's a downside to me of modern content,
Yeah, I'm a huge like tech fan. I mean, I was born in the late 90s, so I kind of came up with the rise of like modern technology. So, like I still remember dial-up internet, but I didn't ever work on it or like do college on it or something like that. And so I'm a big fan of like the evolving of tech and everything becoming tech. And like my main bank account is Cash App. I'm a very like digital oriented person. But that scares me too. Like I said, my main bank is Cash App, but I'm like really annoyingly like counterbalanced of like that, but also like cash because cash is king and like we need like physical stuff in your hand that someone can't just like shut down. I have too many friends who have had like Patreons and PayPals and Venmos and bank accounts get shut down and done whatever because of like content that they put out or whatever other reasons. I don't really trust that, but also it's like one of the things I'm super passionate about, and it's a tough kind of boundary. I think blockchain and crypto and some of the other stuff that you're talking about kind of helps bridge that gap because it is more permanent, but it's still like evolving tech at the same time. Yeah,
no, and to me, what you just said is why it's so exciting. I didn't get into crypto to like get some crazy return or like I don't just buy stuff to have the number go up. I think it's like it's cool if that happens, but there's not really a first principles reason for that to work as well. Like even if it does work for you, like that doesn't make sense. Like there's got to be something underlying here that's of like genuinely innovative, or otherwise we're just like gambling and this isn't going to work anyway, right? So we better hope, even if you're on that side of like I'm just excited about my Bitcoin being worth more, like you better hope there's actually something like innovative here, or it's not going to hold up. And I mean, to me, that's what's so exciting. I think there is, of course, but to me, what was exciting about it is that disintermediation aspect, this ability to have more personal control, so that like, yeah, look, it's not the federal government's business, like what's being sold online. Like the fact that I think the from a libertarian perspective, like the credit companies, MasterCard, Visa, the amount of control that they have over what can be bought and sold, which is of course ultimately substantially driven by regulation. Like I think that's one of the most messed up parts of online stuff. I think there's all kinds of stuff that's not bought and sold, where there's a lot more friction to buy and sell it, and so that's what's exciting to me. It's like, hey, this is digital money. We can spend money online. We don't have to worry about these other problem. Same thing with in a different space with what we're doing, but with publishing, I'm much more excited to see, people be using my technology for its intended purpose, which is not just stuff that might get censored, right? Like it's just people who want more, who want to have more control. But I get excited when people are publishing content. They're excited that they own, they own their identity, this kind of thing. Like, I think that's what got me into it. I also think that's what will ultimately lead to success. But to me, that's what's exciting about blockchain and cryptocurrency, this fact that like we don't have to surrender the same amount of control to intermediaries, whether those be big tech companies or governments.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that excited me when I first hopped onto Odysee a few months back was that there was like a bunch of normie videos on there.
Yeah.
It didn't give you the same feeling that like BitChute or 4chan or Getter or Parler or any of these other like alternative media companies that have come out in the last couple of years. It wasn't some like alt-right like craziness. It was like, here, this is how you fix a cracked iPhone screen.
Right.
Here's a yoga video. I went for a walk in the woods today, and here's what I saw. It's what YouTube used to be back when YouTube was fun and not just a bunch of like mainstream media content clipped and put onto YouTube.
I mean, look, that's exactly right. I mean, YouTube's been our number one fan. Like sometimes I can't believe some of the things that they're doing, but yeah, this is not, you don't have to be at risk of, like, the idea of wanting to own your identity and not trusting Google or Facebook or whoever, like that's not an alt-right thing. You don't have to be worried about getting deleted yourself. It's not even necessarily about worrying deleted. The algorithms change, you get demonetized randomly. They're always changing the rules on you. You don't have the same sense of say, you don't have the same ownership, and so there's all kinds of ways in which, I think this approach is better, and that's what activates the people to come over. If all you're selling on is you won't get banned over here, like you are going to attract people who generally have a problem with getting banned, right? And then who there might be, and I'm not saying that I think I'm of the opinion ban basically nothing, but like give people choices, give people strong filtration controls, etc. Like to me that's the right solution, but also some of those people can be off-putting to other people, and if you have a collection of only things that are off-putting to others, you're going to get kind of trapped in terms of where you can go as a product or as a brand. And I'm not saying they even deserve that reputation. I'm like a very non-judgmental. To me, I'm like pro everything, just for anyone, because I know I've come across I'm like pro-communist, I'm like pro-auth-right. I'm pro all of it. Like to me, libertarianism is like, well, there's a large world. Surely we can be libertarian somewhere. Hopefully we can respect each other. But it's like, to me, like as long as you don't want like world domination of your ideology, like if you want to have a very religious country, a very communist one, like whatever, I'm friendly towards all of it. It's just not, to me, it's like it's not for me. So as long as you don't want to force it on me, we're probably cool. But yeah. So that's sort of my my personal thought on all of it, and so I take the same kind of approach to what we're building. To me, it's like I'm not necessarily it's not fair the way that some people are treated by big tech. There is a slant towards certain ideologies, certain kinds of things. So what's labeled misinformation, what's not. Even if some of the things that they label misinformation, I might also think are false. It's like, well, you can teach communism, and you can be an enthusiastic fan of communism. No state reps get deplatformed for calling, like, I can call for Amazon to be seized, or whatever it might be. That's not, I can call for price ceilings, price floors. That is like as fake as flat Earth theory, right? Like it's literally that fake. Okay, no one gets a fact check. No one gets this kind of treatment, right? So to me, I don't really see it as happening fairly. I see it as happening against one political class of people, one sort of, and it happens particularly to them, and another class of people is doing it, and it feels very unfair to me. And so I do like that I get to kind of help fight that a little bit.
Fight that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about here with like the normie presence on Odysee speaks to something that we as a movement sometimes forget, I think, and that's that liberty is actually pretty popular. Like the concept of it, and a lot of people act like there's a lot of people out there that feel like a libertarian on a day-to-day basis. They just haven't done the amount of like research or give a shit on the political ideologies that we have, and so they don't know the word. But they'll see something like Odyssey and compare it with YouTube and be like, yeah, that's the better choice. I'm gonna go put my content there because I care about individual liberty and freedom. They just might not say that last part, but it's really true. And we kind of get into a defeatist mindset of like, oh, you know, we only got 2%, like, you know, we're only, you know, have X amount of followers, you know, liberty's not popular, but it actually kind of is.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with you, although I do want to say that, like, I don't see Odyssey specifically as like a libertarian project. I do see it as something that's like inclusive to all kinds of to non-libertarians, you know, all this kind of thing. I do think there are also a lot of people, and maybe you'll say these people, they're actually libertarian, maybe they are, I don't know. But there are a lot of people who I think that, and this is the people I think we figure out, they just don't care, man. They think a lot of what's going on is dumb. They like, or they're just checked out, you know? And I definitely think that's part of what we're trying to tap into is like, definitely not people who are necessarily libertarian, but people who are just like, gee, like we like making jokes. We think it's funny when things are made fun of. We think that like everyone's way too uptight, you know, and that's people of all kinds of political persuasion. Because I will say, like, you see it. It's not. We have, you know, we do have like people, literally communist people on the far left who are, you know, who do also get in trouble with bans, who are advocating for things, who get fact checked or whatever it might, you know, what it might be. I think that like really anyone outside of center left. If you're center left, I think you're pretty protected. But if you're left of center left, I think you also face issues with can face issues with big tech.
Oh yeah. And yeah, I think those people are kind of who I was speaking of, is like, yeah, the kind of people who are checked out are mostly libertarian. They just don't care enough to ever identify as one. And that they're still allies in my mind, because like that's how it should be. Like I just read Life Without Principle by Henry David Thoreau.
Yeah.
And there's one quote towards the end of it, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's something along the lines of like, politics is something so distasteful that I don't think I've ever given it a thought at all, or something like that. As somebody who's like considered a great political theorist and author, it was just like, no, politics is fucking stupid. Why would I give a shit about politics? And it's like, I think that's true libertarianism. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of us that have to give a shit about politics because there's a bunch of terrible people that give a shit about politics, and we have to counterbalance them. But I would love for the majority of the world to remain mostly blue-pilled and just like kind of not give a shit and like live their lives in a free manner while we help dismantle the state and like allow them to actually do that. I hope that people can like maintain their sanity and their livelihoods and their ignorance while we do this. Because it's a terrible life once you get red-pilled. It's obnoxious. Like the Matrix really did a good job of like depicting the like horrid life that it is once you get red pilled. You're like constantly running from these robots, and like you live in a fucking cave in the middle of nowhere. Like that's accurate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not pushing back too strongly. I will say sometimes that like, well, one, I will say if you like your state, you can keep it. That's my push. But you know, I think that to me, my sense is if the world gets crazier, sometimes I feel like it gets easier for me personally. Like I'm like everyone, and I don't know. I've talked to other people who disagree with me on this, so feel free to disagree with me as well. My feelings won't be hurt, but I'm just like sometimes I feel like, well, people are just getting crazier. They're being more deranged. You know, like if I can't beat someone this crazy at business or whatever, you know, it's like, what am I doing if they're this crazy? You know. So sometimes I do feel that way, like that kind from it. Now, I'm not saying I like it, right? Like I'd rather the world be saner, but that like from the sense of like my personal success, sometimes I'm like, man, people are getting so crazy that just by being like sort of sane, I'm you know,
you become the genius of
exactly. The land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. That whole idea,
yeah. You know, that's fair. And I do feel like, and I want to talk about this a little bit. I feel like you're probably in a situation where you feel a little bit more comfortable in your liberty being up in the land of the free. and I'm in New York, so
Yeah. We gotta come up to New
like, there's a
Hampshire.
whole bunch of bullshit. I love New Hampshire. I spent 4.5 months there working on the Tulsi Gabbard campaign, and absolutely loved it. Got to meet a bunch of great libertarians while I was there. The only problem, like, if I'm gonna move somewhere from my homeland, it's gonna be somewhere where the air doesn't hurt my face during the winter.
Yeah,
And so New Hampshire doesn't solve that problem for me.
yeah. But yeah, I've definitely, and I forget that at times. Like I've definitely built like a nice bubble for myself. You know, like my personal life, you know, my family, my my colleagues are not necessarily all my colleagues are libertarians, but they're at least like, you know, pro free speech type. You know, so yeah, I definitely like I feel like I can be pretty honest about who I am, what I believe. I think I've like kind of always been that way, but I've definitely sought out a life that like would let me continue to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is like my parents, especially, like they're libertarians. They won't register L, but that's fine. They voted for Johnson, Larry Sharp, and Joe Jorgensen. Like, so I consider that a win. But they'll still put a mask on like everywhere that they go into if there's a sign on the door that says please wear a mask, even though we live in a non-enforcement county where most of the places, like, I'll walk in behind them without a mask on, no one says anything to me. But it's just there's a huge level of just blind compliance in my area, and I'm like upstate in like a really rural, like blood red area, but it's still a bunch of the COVID hysteria.
Okay. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the Albany area. Albany.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the Albany. Oh, you're sorry. Yeah. Well, I'm in New Hampshire now, so I mean, you know, it's
there you go.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sometimes actually I wonder about libertarians, like if there's actually more things sort of clustered, clustered with it. Like I definitely support being very against the the COVID regime and all of that stuff. I think that stuff's like clearly anti-liberty, but like there, I do think like there's I do think some people have become like a bit reactionary, and I may even be in this camp, so I'm not throwing first dead, but I get a little bit like they're so frustrated that they're just like reflexively against against anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not even saying
I'm probably in that camp too.
Yeah. Well, because you kind of have to. I mean, you feel like there's just very little space for middle ground. There's very little space for being someone who's more like nuanced. Like to me, it's like so much of society is just like full on tribal warfare. And I'm not even against this. Like to me, like even part of the reason I like the Free State Project, I'm like, cool, there's a libertarian tribe. They need one too.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that's the way that it's things have really gotten this way. Where there's no everything carves. Democrat, Republican, or sometimes libertarians are a third leg, but like. They can't agree on anything. They have to take opposite positions of one another. If one party sees or one tribe sees one event taking place, they see it the other one. And so it's like this idea that we're can't observe the same reality. That we're just so far apart from one another. It's strange to me. I've never seen it be like this. So
yeah, and you guys have legitimized Bitcoin fairly heavily up there in New Hampshire as well, making it a lot more realistic. I feel like when I'm up there, it feels more like a currency, where a lot of my friends, it's still just more of an investment, and kind of how you were talking earlier. Tell me a little bit about like how it is up there and being able to actually use it for things.
Yeah, there's a lot of usage. We've had various third parties have rated New Hampshire as like a top state for cryptocurrency. I know multiple people who like live off of cryptocurrency. Like they don't use the banks. They use cryptocurrency for everything. Certainly among free staters, it's very normal to be like, hey, can you pay in Bitcoin or whatever? And like there's networks. There's a lot of agorism up here. People who are doing, whether that's like they're farming and they're growing food, or they're vending, or they're selling goods, or they're just doing like, handiwork, odd jobs, this kind of thing. There's definitely a network of people who, hey, just take cryptocurrency, and people just pay for things that way. Like there's market days and so on where people come and sell goods, and basically everyone there is taking cryptocurrency. At Source themselves, you definitely see some, like there's a number of Bitcoin ATMs, like here in my city, which is only a city of like a little over 100,000. There's multiple spots with Bitcoin ATMs. There's probably, I don't know what the current count is, maybe there's around a dozen places I could go in and pay with cryptocurrency. Certainly far from everywhere, but definitely a decent number. And it feels like it's growing. And it does feel like the ones that, like, some of them are like, they're definitely like sticking with it. Like, I go to, Free Staters go out to like a bar every Tuesday. There's in this city, in Manchester, there's like a bar day happy hour every Tuesday, and like a ton of people pay with cryptocurrency there. A lot of the meetup spots are, they target places that take cryptocurrency. So there's definitely a decent amount of it. It was hard, like the whole Bitcoin thing. I mean, I think things have gotten better since then, but the truth is, like, Bitcoin never really succeeded in that way, or had a lot of trouble. But Bitcoin got all the mind share from a cryptocurrency perspective. Deservedly so. I'm never trying to drag Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's awesome, but like, like Bitcoin as the peer-to-peer, buy a cup of coffee, maybe it'll get there with Lightning, but it never really delivered on that, right? Like, I do want to, and some others would. Some would say, Dash or whatever else, or like a lot of people here like Dash, but like the whatever. I want to see it succeed in that, in that way. I'd rather like cryptocurrency be normal and my cryptocurrency be worth 10% as much, right? Because that's what's really exciting, is this ability to, like, hey, the federal government's not gonna be able to mess with us, sending money to each other. We can now send cash money online, and that'd be really cool. Instead of the payment system being used as a way to, enforce, authority or whatever. Right. I feel like I lost maybe my train of thought. You were saying, you're asking if people use Bitcoin. I started going back to the yeah, do people use cryptocurrency up here? Yeah, the answer is yes. I'll say for anyone in the New Hampshire area, freestatecrypto.com, 500th weekly meetups. That's right. There's been a weekly Bitcoin meetup going on in Manchester, New Hampshire for 500 weeks straight. You can go and look up what the price.
That's almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I found an old forum thread on Bitcoin Talk from like 2012. People talking about, like, meet up in New Hampshire. Let's go Bitcoin. Yeah. So there's a lot of history up here. You never know who in like a holy sweatshirt is actually a Bitcoin millionaire. So that's something to be careful of if you come visit up here. But yeah, there's been a lot of enthusiasm in Bitcoin for a long time here. So that event is going to be a fun event. I think it's $20. It's here in New Hampshire. I'll be there. A bunch of other Free Staters, crypto people will be there. So it's a fun.
When did you say that was?
It's the first weekend in February. I think it's February 6th.
All right. I might have to make a trip out there.
The meetup's always been on a Sunday, but it is like a big party on a Sunday night. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Manchester was the first place that I ever saw a Bitcoin ATM in the flesh, at Murphy's, which I'm assuming is the bar you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, Murphy's, I will say, recently lost their Bitcoin ATM because that was one of the Crypto Sixes. So I don't know if you saw that story.
I did not.
Okay, so Ian Freeman and the Crypto Six are a group of Free Staters who all got arrested by the federal government. This is much more serious. I know some people know I'm getting sued, but mine's like all civil. This is not. I'm not facing anything. Like, it's fucking sucks. I'm not trying to, but like, I'm not going to. There's no chance I'm going to jail. So people being threatened with jail time is like another level. So that's Ian Freeman. Ian and this guy Rich Paul are the ones I think they really want to get, but they're technically charging $6 more, I think, to get some of them to talk about the other two. You know how they do that. But they definitely want to get Ian, and Ian was running all the ATMs up here, right? And he was running them through a church, a church that he had founded, and they're claiming various money transmission or financial crimes. So the FBI came in and they raided and took all of his computers. They took all the ATMs too. So all the ATMs he had throughout the state, they took them all. So he was he might have been the largest operator of ATMs in the state. He certainly would have been near the top if he wasn't. And so all of them got taken.
That's crazy. I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
And so it's basically just because they were using Bitcoin the way it was meant to be used and evading taxes and regulations, right?
Well, no, I don't. I mean, as far as I know, like Ian tries to dot his I's and cross his T's he's not. He certainly would have the moral stance that it wouldn't be wrong to not do those things. But he's a smart activist. He's been doing it for a long time, and so I don't know. I haven't gone into all the specifics, so I don't know like all of the details. I mean, I don't know if he's allowed. I think he can do shows, so you could ask him if he wants to come on. He does Free Talk Live. He's on the radio himself quite a bit. There's videos about it. They have a website, thecrypto6.com. So if people want to learn more about the case, but there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of this. There's that's the thing is like you get all types of here. So you have obviously like the political types just want to run for office, unwind the state where they can. If it used to take 20 hours of licensing to get a barber license and we can cut it to 10, then we're winning, And then you got people who are like, hardcore, trying to avoid the state entirely, activists, civil disobedient, all this side. You've really got the whole spectrum. I love all of them, but I'm not trying to make one side look better. To me, it's we're all big happy family up here. I like all of them, but you get all the different kinds.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about the movement is just the massive amount of diversity, because there's just a huge spectrum of like, I just decided that like maybe the Democratic Party doesn't care as much about the things that I care about as I thought they did. All the way to like, I was born on an anarchist commune and I have never had a bank account or a social security number, and the government doesn't even know I exist. And, like, we have both of those, like come into a bar and have a drinks together. And it's great.
Yeah, exactly. It does. It can make people more libertarian. I will say, I was like, I certainly was libertarian enough to move here, so I was pretty libertarian. But it put that being up here and probably my court case definitely helped push me to be like even more so.
Yeah. So LBRY came before Odysee, correct?
Yeah, by several years. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about how the idea of LBRY came about, and then we can talk about how Odysee came about.
So LBRY came about from me learning about Bitcoin and blockchain, being entrepreneurial and technical, and just kind of thinking about what else could you use this technology for. And I was always into just like freedom online, free speech online, free ability to communicate, etc. And so I just couldn't stop thinking about this idea of using it to maintain this registry of content, because we already had technology like BitTorrent and so on that was like pretty robust, pretty censorship resistant in that way, but like we didn't have identity coupled with it. We didn't have payments coupled with it. It never was used by legitimate creators either, which I always thought was kind of sad. It was a little bit. I'm not going to say never, but like it never got never got all the way there. And so I just I couldn't stop thinking about it. And once I couldn't stop thinking about it, I brought some friends into the project. We put some money in and just kind of started hacking.
Okay.
Yada yada. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of steps in between. But like, that really was how it started. We had an idea. We started working on the idea. I mean, I'd done a startup before, so I had some idea about honestly, a lot of it's like, hey, you have an idea, you start at it, you get it out there, you react to the things that people say about it, and you don't quit. And I mean, we're talking about like coming up on 6 years or so of maybe longer, honestly, since the like first conception of the idea. Right.
Who was the first person you brought in?
There, I guess it would have been. Yeah, there's a guy up here. Is another free stater. His name's Jimmy. I think he was the first guy to join. He started programming. He was one of the programmers.
Okay, so it went straight to the actual building step of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a builder. I mean, I was a coder too. Like, I mean, that's so I started. You know, we just started building. I've also never. You know, I've had like moderately successful businesses. Decent, but like I've never been very good at like. I like just like selling. I've always been the kind of entrepreneur who's like, try this sandwich. You know, you'll like it. You know, I don't sell like. I mean, the free state's like a bit of selling a vision, but it's like to me, even there, it's like your life will be better tomorrow. Like I don't like selling like being too aspirational. It feels like too like fake to me. Like because the odds are it could be wrong or whatever. But it's like if you're just like, well, you can try this and you might like it, and if you like it, you can buy it. Like that's like I'm very comfortable in that space because I like making things. I like the idea that I can make something that the people would want to use, but I don't like promising that I'll make something that you'll really like 3 years from now. So that whole idea of like, you know, some of the fun I've struggled with it, even as we've gotten bigger. Like thankfully we've gotten big enough and successful enough that like VCs will kind of like or whatever they'll like, you know, they might think I'm a little weird or whatever. But I'm not. I like making things that people want to. Want to use. That's what it's always been about. And so that was the way we started this company as well. Yeah.
I dig it. It's funny hearing that because like I've spent most of my adult life in sales and marketing.
Yeah.
It's like all I've done. But I can very much understand why it feels unnatural for most people.
Well, I've done a lot of sales. I've done a lot of because I'll sell stuff, but I'm usually like I sold my previous company. I sold millions of dollars worth of software, but it's just like, well, here's the software. Do you want this? I'll pitch you on it. I'll sell you on why it's good for you, and I'll take time to understand, how to persuade you or whatever that might be. But like, I don't like. I'm not above being an aspirational, but I don't know. Something about like selling something that doesn't exist, I guess. Like that's always. I'm not saying it's like immoral, by the way, or anything. It's just never. I've always like kind of shied away from it.
Yeah, it's been kind of like a chicken and egg scenario in my head, and I have a lot of friends that are kind of working through the same process at the moment as we're all kind of like finding what we're passionate about. And one of the things that I was excited to have you on and talk about was kind of like the building blocks of it, because you have this idea, and then do you build it? Do you get the money for it? Do you try to promote it? Do you try to build the brand first? Do you try to build your own brand first and just get popular enough that you can just plop this idea out and it's a thing in a couple of years?
Yeah,
like
that one's
from an idea.
The hardest.
Yeah, that one, I feel like a lot of people try that last one. Even I kind of did when I first started this show like a year and a half ago. And I'm just, that's definitely, I can just say that that's a bad idea. Go for one of the other things I said for sure.
No, I mean, get that. I think a lot of people think that starting a tech company or starting a startup is this where it's like, oh, I build the thing and then I like market it, and then it either like gets successful or it doesn't. And it's much more about like actually like you build the thing, you like iterate on it and measure it for some period of months to years, and only then maybe like the idea of like some people like building something and then it getting traction like right away, like that's very rare. People were excited about our idea right away, which was a positive signal in the sense that they think, oh, they liked the idea of, a video on the blockchain or YouTube on the blockchain. But like when we started, there were probably like 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 other companies who were like, we're going to do video on the blockchain. Like we're the only ones still here. We're the only ones who did it. And some of those were more popular than we were in the sense that they had more mind share 4 or 5 years ago or 3 years ago, or whatever it might've been. But, to me, it's like, you always focus on like, sort of look, people, all the hype that Getter was getting on Twitter the other day. I'm telling you, from the success of a startup, like that means nothing. Like what matters is whether they retain those people. Now it's an awesome opportunity. I bet Getter had like 5 million signups yesterday, or 1 million signups yesterday. I don't know how many it was.
I think I saw 200,000.
Only 200,000. So maybe my circles were more into it. I read too much, but even still, And look, 200,000 signups. That's a great
in a day. That's impressive.
Very exciting day to have 200,000 people come into the door of your business, right? But like, what it really is will those people come back? Having one day of attention around something. We've had days. We had a day actually when we were very early in our days. It was like 2017 or 2018 where we had like maybe around 100,000 people come in a single day, and it's like, man, a month later they were all gone, because the product wasn't good enough. People were excited about the idea of the product, but the product wasn't good enough to keep them coming back. And that's what's ultimately going to determine success. And it takes a lot of iterations. It's very, very, very few products. Even a killer product right now, something like TikTok, you learn about the actual evolution of it. It was this thing by ByteDance. It started by doing this other thing. Like, when you look at a lot of products, that's how they actually came to take off. Facebook, whatever, right? It was by people who were like, maybe they had something there, but they were good operators. They kept evolving the idea. They kept paying attention. And it took doing that repeatedly to really get somewhere big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's another kind of chicken and egg conundrum when it comes to building a lot of companies, not all, but a number of them, and especially anything like this, where you need the users and the content creators to both exist. And it's, you don't want, no one wants to put content onto a website that no one watches anything on, and no one wants to watch a website that no one puts content on. So you have to kind of grow them both simultaneously and from nothing. How did you work around that issue?
Yeah. So this is called a two-sided marketplace, and it's a classic chicken and egg problem in business. Getting a two-sided marketplace started, you see buyers and sellers, right, or content creators and viewers in this case. But in our case, we hit on the idea of making it really easy for people to sync their content. So we were able to go to creators and give them tools so they can make their content available. So when you can approach a creator, when you approach someone generally, not just a creator, and you incredibly give them an offer that's like, well, heads you win, tails nothing happens. You want to flip the coin, It's the kind of thing, well, I'll just flip the coin, I might get something. So it's like when you were approaching them, it's like they already had some concern about something happening to their content. Cryptocurrency was exciting. So, click the button, your content's safe, you'll learn some cryptocurrency. That let us get a lot of creators in the door when the viewers weren't there, right? And at least not to nearly the same degree. And then that sort of helped get it going. But that's the key. That with any of these that are going to take off, whether it's your Twitter alts or whatever, like, how do you get that kernel of energy of people interacting? Because even if you're frustrated with Twitter, you open Getter. All right, well, now when I post something on Twitter, I don't know, it gets 100 likes. I post something on Getter, it gets 1. Your brain just pulls you back. When I post something, I get to have interaction with a bunch of people, and here I don't have them. So you've got to find ways to get that kernel, going. And once you've got that kernel going, you can grow that because people are coming back. There's some excitement there, even if it's only around one or two creators or only around a certain genre of content or whatever it might be. You've got that, you grow from there. And it's the same thing with movements, actually. By the way, I don't know. I've got like a bit more time. I don't know if we're how long you normally go.
Usually somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Whenever you gotta go.
So I think there's a lot for libertarians to learn from startups, right? And I'll even take I'll take someone like Justin Amash. He's like the CEO of Microsoft, like whatever that guy's name is, or something like in the sense that like he knows he's an efficient political operator. He knows how to run. He's been a mainstream guy, an established guy. That doesn't necessarily mean that he knows how to get a company. The guy who's the CEO of Microsoft would not necessarily be the right guy to take a company from 5 people to 50 people. I'm not saying he'd be bad at it either, right? But they're different kinds of things. When your startup is early in getting traction, when you're getting the early adopters, you're doing things that are different than when you're getting the normies or whatever. I forget the proper term for them in that framework, whatever. They might be called the norm, something close to the norm. But so like libertarianism is in kind of the same place. And I think that one of the mistakes I see people make when they talk about libertarianism, like persuading people to be libertarian, is that like they want to jump right to they've got a product that has very little market share, and they want to jump right to how to sell it to like the most normal person, right? But the normal person is not going to join a group that's that unpopular, right? Like the normal person, those things might help sell it, but what sells it to the normal person is also them looking around and saying, oh, that person has it, and it does what, but they're never going to buy it. Even if they're sold, you can present it in the most normal way. They're not going to go first. The guy who buys something, who's the 1 millionth person to buy something or 10 millionth person to buy something, like he's just not going to be the second guy to buy something. He's just not. They're different psychologies. They're different people, and same kind of thing with libertarianism. Like whatever it might be to succeed, you've got to figure out what moves the needle from where you are to like twice where you are. So if you're at 2%, how do you get to 4 or 5%? Like it's very rare that you're going extremely, extremely rare that you're going to jump from that like to the mainstream. And so that's the question that should be asking from a starter perspective. Like, and maybe Amash can do that. I'm not saying he can't, but like those people, whoever, like, and you can look, people attracted to libertarianism right now for the most part are not that normal. They're not the middle of the type person. Because that's not what politics is about. We don't just believe things because we're like, this policy would be the best and I vote for it. No, you're joining a tribe, you're joining a team, you're joining all this affiliated things. I mentioned earlier, I was saying it's weird that it's actually not that weird, that all these things get packed in. And so that's what that person has to be signing up for. So you've got to make that appealing to someone who's going to go and say, well, that team has 150 million people on it. That team's got 150 million people on it. I want to join the team with 2 million people on it, or 5 million people on it, or whatever, right? And so you're by definition appealing to people who are like who are something more like that early adopter at a startup or something like this. They're not the middle of the curve or the late curve adopter. And so I think that's like an important point to keep in mind. I don't think that leads to some particular answer. I think it does lead to like being more comfortable with experimenting. I will say that, like, we should be comfortable with experimenting because you don't know what works. But I'm not trying to lead people towards any particular answer. I just think it's a good question to ask.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think that the weird conundrum there is kind of like back to what you were saying about like that group of people that just don't care. They present as normies most of the time. When we see them on the streets, like they look like normies, they act like normies a lot of times, but they're also still kind of our target market. So we have the like almost extremists, and then we have the like don't give a fucks. Yeah. And we're trying to kind of message to both. And I honestly think that the same message appeals to both groups fairly often. Because the people that are turned off by, say, like a Spike Cohen, because like, oh no, he does weird things, and like he had his shirt off in a profile picture once, and then like, did something else weird. Like the people that are turned off by that probably aren't the early adopters that you're talking about. Yeah. But he's still able to kind of market to both groups. And, I mean, Dave Smith is pretty good at that too. There's a number of other people in the party that are good at that. But yeah, I completely agree. We need to find those early adopter mentalities to help grow the movement first. So before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to kind of shout out what you're working on in Odysee and LBRY, and how people can better get involved, how maybe some people could help out.
So you can... Hopefully you're on Odysee.com by now watching this. If you want to use it at the next level, you can go to LBRY.com and download the desktop app, or download some other ways of doing it there. If you're an engineer, everything we're doing is open source. You can get involved there. We also have an active Discord, an active community. Pretty sure there's thousands of people in there right now. Chat.lbry.org is how you can get in there. I'm also on the network. If you want to follow me or see any other interviews with me, you can follow me at KAUFFJ on LBRY. And I'll repost this there as well to my channel. We have a feature, it's like reposting on Twitter, so you can put other content into your channel, into your feed. And I'm also on Twitter personally at my full name, Jeremy Kauffman. I'm very if you're into library, if you want to get involved, we're always looking for smart people to work with. We're always looking for content creators to join the network. So all that stuff. I'm very approachable. You can find me. You can send me a message. And if you're a libertarian and you're interested in New Hampshire, I also help out with that. I always love seeing people come out here. We've got some events coming up. I talked about the Free State Crypto in the first weekend of February. There's Liberty Forum the first weekend in March. I'll also be at that. And you can come out anytime. There's stuff going on all the time. There's a Bitcoin meetup every week. There's meetups every week. So if you ever want to come out, check out New Hampshire, shoot me a message and say hi to me while you're out here.
Yeah. I love the group out there in New Hampshire. People keep telling me to move there, and it's becoming more and more likely as
peer pressure works. That's all.
It really does. You guys have convinced Reed Coverdale. Like, he's considering moving back from Utah, and I'm like, all right, if Reed moves back, then maybe he'll be the final tipping point for me.
Yeah, awesome.
But Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. This was great.
Yeah, it's great to be on. Bye, David.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back here next week for the Right for Liberty special. We also I'll be on Angelo for Liberty's show tomorrow, as well as Justin O'Donnell, who we mentioned earlier, is doing a January 6th anniversary stream that I'll be a part of at 8 p.m. So definitely check that out. We'll catch you back here next time. Until then, keep up the fight.
Shut up and sit down.